Good morning, everybody. This is John Scarborough. We're out here with the sheep. We're in the bamboo thicket. Just about gotten all the grazing we're going to get out of this bamboo. But what we're coming through now and doing, now that most of the grazing that they can reach is done, now we're going to come through here and we're actually chopping and dropping. So we are cleaning up in here and we're dropping a lot of this stuff right here. You can see we're dropping those bamboo leaves and stuff, basically using it to feed them. You can do this at any point, but you might as well do it when there's an animal here to feed them. So we're coming through like this. Got a little machete in my hand. Now I can come through here with a blade or a chainsaw, and sometimes I do, but a lot of times I find it more peaceful to just to come out here with a machete, and I'll call the sheep in. They'll come in around me and they'll start eating all around me, and I just enjoy it better with a machete. But also you can come in here with the machete on any of your bamboos that you're planning on leaving. You can see these limbs here. I like to come in and I want you to notice there's very little life on these limbs, especially down lower. They're just there, they're dead. Okay, and you can just come right up close to your plant there and just knock it right off. You just about do it with a stick. Now it's hard to view in and catch it real good there, but I mean, you see that right there. You're just kind of knocking it off. So that's what's nice about the machete, is it's easier to come in and do that and get those all knocked off. The reason for that is it's easier to get through. It's less likely to poke the eyes of cattle and sheep. Now, cattle and sheep are a lot better than we are at watching where they're going and being careful about not poking their eyes, just because they're used to being out in this. But every now and then you'll see them, they'll come out and they'll have just a little spot where they poke their eye or something like that. So, but it's more than that. Even with these dead, when you get a lot of them and they get real thick like this and they go all the way back, they will start to block light and they'll keep growth from happening back here. So by knocking a lot of that out, you're making it to where it's easy for you to walk through. It's more enjoyable. It's easier to catch an animal if you ever have to, because if you ever get a sheep or something out in here and you're trying to get out here and get it kind of herded back to where you need to, or get it caught, it's very difficult to do in a spot like this. And they know how hard it is. So that's part of it, is it's easy for you to actually make it easy to get around. But the biggest thing is you're increasing the light in there and giving them, allowing this to regrow better in the future. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the most out of every part of your land as you can. Okay, we could clear out all of this. We could tear away all of this right here, but this pond has several spots that leak like this all through there. So the pond has to get to where it stops leaking first, and but then also the ground here is really, really rough, you know. And then once you do pull all of this away from the pond, since the pond dam has been allowed to grow up, which is not good, but once it's happened, there's already living root structure all through that pond. So without redoing that pond entirely until you fix the problem, tearing away all of this is not smart. Okay, so we're trying to gain the most out of every piece of land that we can. So this little spot right here, we find it best to run pigs in here because pigs can't sweat. So it's good to keep them in shady spots. We leave all of our oak trees. These are actually water oak right here coming up. I've heard some people call them pin oaks. I've always heard them called water oaks where I'm at. But we leave those there because they drop a good amount of acorns, and they'll also do good here. So we might cut one or two out just so they don't kind of kill each other. Might even cut all but one out. We'd still be safe to do that at this point. If we wait much longer, we're not. But if you cut all but one out, you'll leaf out real big at the bottom, and then you'll leave one for acorns, and you'll leaf out at the bottom for leaf food for them. So that's one thing you can do. But we're leaving a lot of the bamboos and stuff in here because the bamboo will actually start to shoot out and give lots of good shoots. And also during the springtime, you'll start to see a lot of life in here, a lot of leaves, things like that. So it's the best time to graze anything. So while they're in here grazing, I like to get it all opened up. and just slowly get it more and more open and get it better. And then each year you'll get a little bit more life. But it's also just, like I said, it's more enjoyable to get out here. When I first got here, man, you couldn't move. You couldn't see through anything. You couldn't move through anything. But now it's starting to get to where you can actually come out here. It's actually cool, enjoyable to be out here, you know, everything. So what we're looking for is we're going to cut out like little stuff like this. We know this is not going anywhere. It's absorbing a little bit of light, but it's never really going to get all that big. So what it's really doing is just blocking nutrients and blocking light for any new growth next year. Okay. Then secondly, we're going to start chopping off limbs of all of these. Chop them off. I usually chop them off as far as I can reach, or at least above my head. And then you want to go through and you want to find little spots like this. You see how there's 3 little bitty bamboos, but then a couple of big bamboos? Most people think that bamboo starts off really small like this and grows to that size or even bigger, some of them bigger and bigger. Well, first of all, there are different varieties, and some varieties grow bigger than others, but all of these out here are the same variety. A lot of times what happens more than anything is when all these come up as a shoot, they'll all come up at the same time. And some of them will come up really small, some of them will come up about this size, and some of them will come up big, old, huge, heavy bamboo. So although they're going to keep growing throughout their life, that's dictating how good of a plant they are. So just like culling anything else, we knock those small ones out as well, because those also grew slower. Okay, so in nature, those would have been eaten. These right here, these big ones would have grown so fast that they would have never gotten eaten. But these right here grew slower, smaller, more scraggly. And so they would have grown up at a pace where other grazing animals that would have come through here would have actually knocked those out. So I like to do that as well. I'll chop all 3 of those out, get rid of those. There's good spacing between those other bamboos. I might leave this one, and I'll chop all of those out. I'm also looking for dead bamboos like these right here. Those dead bamboos, they will stand there for several years. I mean, so many years they'll just stand there and not rot away. By pulling them down and dropping them on the ground, they'll start to rot a lot faster once they get down there on the ground. But they're not blocking light. Okay, so like this one right here, this little bitty scraggly thing, it never made it. Okay, if there would have been animals back here grazing it, it wouldn't have been a problem. So sometimes when you don't have animals working in nature the way they should be working, then you've got little problems that you've got to take care of by yourself. So like right here, we're going to come through, we'll knock this one out. Usually you can just step on it and break it. We'll end up cutting this one right here, probably cutting a couple of those smaller ones there, and then delimbing everything else. So you can see that's what we're going to do all the way across there. But the good thing about chopping these down is these smaller ones right here, they've got a lot of leaf on them. So I'm going to actually chop them and drop them, and they're going to end up right there as sheep food. We're going to raise some lambs with that. So we'll probably have about 1-2 more days, maybe 3 more days at best with these sheep out here, depending on how much time we actually have to get out here and manually harvest food for them. And then after that, we'll be moving them back to the original pasture they were on before. But anyway, guys, I wanted to sign off here, but I just kind of wanted to talk about managing bamboo and managing areas like this. The biggest problem people have with bamboo is that bamboo spreads so fast. But you got to remember, bamboo is a grass. They're not trees. A lot of people think that bamboo is trees. Bamboo is grass. You have to treat it like grass, okay? Grass, what do you have to control grass? Grass has to be grazed, all right? That's how you control grass. So the best thing we can do here is to graze this, okay? Now, sheep won't eat the bamboo shoot. It's just too big for them, okay? So you need an animal in here that will eat the bamboo shoot, and that's going to be pigs. Pigs get so much good fiber, carbs, and some protein out of that bamboo shoot. But also horses. If you have horses, you can run horses out here. Now, horses are a little bit silly sometimes. They don't know how to take care of themselves as well as they probably did before they got bred a lot. But before they got bred into different ways, you know. But horses that aren't more like wild horses don't know how to take care of themselves as well as maybe they once could have. So you probably want to get all your limbs chopped off, get them all cleaned off like that. You know, all your little limbs, get it cleaned off so they don't poke themselves in the eyes and everything. But horses love to eat those bamboo shoots. A lot of people see that they'll eat carrots and things, but they don't realize they love them bamboo shoots. So horses can actually be really good and effective for controlling bamboo, and it can actually be a good treat for them during the spring. They will just absolutely go in there. They'll control it completely. They pretty much keep your bamboo from spreading. They will keep it at bay. But like I said, pigs are really good, but cows are too. If you put cows out there with them, they will eat all of those shoots down. And, you know, you're going to get, some shoots are going to make it. Like the really big, thick ones like this, the ones that grow extremely fast, you're going to get a few of them that are going to make it. But you're not going to get nearly as many. They're going to control it a lot better, okay? So just remember that. I mean, bamboo is about 12% protein in these leaves right here. That's not exceedingly high, but it's a pretty good protein. And it's a very good protein in the wintertime, because in the wintertime, they don't have a lot of green in the wintertime. So this actually it's an evergreen plant. It makes a really good plant for cattle and for sheep and everything else, and a good source of greenery, fiber, and protein even in the winter. So bamboo is not all bad. It's just a grass. It has to be grazed to be managed correctly. You know, all types of grass are actually far better and get healthier and healthier, but also can be managed and won't overgrow if they are grazed. There's just something about everything about grazing is different than actually chopping or cutting for hay or even brush hogging. Grazing is the best thing for grass overall. There's lots of different reasons why, and I'm not going to get into all of that. Part of it's the actual grabbing of the plant and light ripping. Part of it's the fertility that you're putting down. You know, there's just so many different reasons. But ultimately, there's so much science to show that grazing is the best thing for managing grass overall. So if you have bamboo, you might consider that, because I will tell you this right here. This bamboo was planted, from what I understand, talking to several farmers that have owned this land in the past. This bamboo was planted by a farmer who owned a fish supply store, or a fishing supply store is what I mean to say. They're in Hyco, which is not even really a town anymore, but I live right next to Hyco. And apparently he owned this land back in the 50s. He owned this land, and he planted this bamboo in the 50s. Well, ever since then, his store finally ended up shutting down. It was no longer productive, and the town slowly went away more and more, you know, as old small towns do. And it got to where they just, you know, they no longer sold cane poles. So he actually planted these to sell them as fishing poles. So they stopped using this and started using more synthetic stuff, things like that. But he also, he wanted his water to flow like this. He actually made minnow ponds all out in here. So he actually did a lot of this on purpose, okay? My point in saying that is that his son got to where that was no longer productive for him. So his son started spraying this, and apparently his son spent a huge amount of money, an enormous amount of money, trying to kill off all the bamboos. Was not able to kill them all off. Well, then after many years and changing things and getting stuff set back and redone, doing things different ways, he killed off some, but it's still growing in a lot of the areas. There's some land that we're leasing that was all owned by one person way back in the day. And that land has bamboo on it as well. But he has never successfully killed off that. So that's over 70 years that farmers ever since then, have been trying to kill off this bamboo. And they have not been entirely successful, okay? So you can kill it. I'm not saying you can't, but what I am saying is that sometimes learning to manage things, learning to manage the land that you have and make money off of it, rather than spending money on it, sometimes can be better. So just looking at a piece of land like this and saying, what can I do to make money, rather than how much money is it going to cost me to get rid of this, okay? Sometimes I find that to be a better way of living. It's a more peaceful way of living. It's a lot easier to live that way. And that's kind of my gripe. Y'all hear me talk about the vegan diet and things like that a lot. That's kind of my gripe with the vegan diet. I'm not against vegans in any way. That's not what I'm trying to do. It's just the diet itself that I'm against, because the vegan diet is all for cutting down all of this kind of stuff and managing in the type of way that I was just talking about. Managing in such a way where you're growing huge amounts of monocrops instead of taking, the only way you can turn this into food, the only way you can turn this into something productive for humans. Of course, we know that the humans can eat the shoots of some of the bamboo, but the best way to turn this into productive food is to put a sheep out here, or a cow, or a pig, and graze those animals out here and let them turn it into extremely bioavailable food. The protein that you get that the animal absorbs is not nearly as bioavailable for us until after that animal absorbs it, and then it becomes extremely bioavailable. Plus, we can by default put that animal in a much safer environment and keep them from ever being eaten in a more painful way. Okay, that's the wonderful thing about the way we can raise animals, is the way we raise them, there's no pain for them. There's nothing but wonderful life, and then a completely painless, harmless death. Okay, whereas the vegan community, the way their world would end up looking would actually be animals in the wild, and they would be half starved, they'd be mangy, and they would end up dying off from different types of from other wild animals and things like that. And some of those deaths in the wild can take hours and hours to actually kill those animals off. Okay, so that's the benefit of raising animals this way and actually being able and actually eating animals ourselves, is we're actually able to protect them from a much worse life, and they can actually get in here. We can actually, instead of getting rid of all of this, we're actually able to produce all of this carbon and put all of this carbon back in, pull it from the atmosphere and actually put it back into the soil. It's just a much better system than trying to do monocropping and things like that. So anyway, guys, just kind of wanted to give you all a little video on managing bamboo. It's been a little more drawn out than maybe I would like to, but sometimes a good full-length video to just really put a lot of good information out is good. So, all right, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the bell.